in part of my mania and crazed, stress-soaked, mental health challenging last 2 years, I have insisted in our company at Meadowlark Media that we get younger and smarter, younger and smarter. And Greg Cote bobs in here today and says he's trying to sell his 1967 encyclopedia set.
Complete set, which is very important in the encyclopedia selling game. It has to be a complete set, and it is, man. We're going A through Z. I believe there's 2 accompanying dictionaries. It's the New Standard brand, 1967, and I want to say for the year, I want to say they're in mint condition, and I don't want to get rid of them because I'm a rack pat. I get rid of nothing, but I'm in the process of redesigning my 1970s era office and turning it into a podcast studio / office. And so I'm having to throw away stuff. I rarely use a stapler anymore. I've got like 9 boxes of staples. I don't even want to throw those away. So I don't know. I cannot throw my encyclopedias away. I just can't. My parents bought them for me when I'm like 12 years old, and they mean something to me. And I'm thinking of selling everything and giving it to Ron McGill's charity or something, because I will not throw away stuff that is meaningful to me, but I will sell it. I've got so much stuff.
I will sell it, though.
I will.
This is Chris. He's doing you a favor because my grandparents, when they passed away, we spent.
Whoa!
What?
No, this is important. What she's saying.
I'm being serious.
Yes.
This is 100% serious.
No, I'm
When
telling you, man.
Shit that I would have had to deal with, he's dealing
when my
with for
grandparents
me.
passed away, they had staples that were important to them that they never threw away for 80 years.
Wow.
And it's important to start kind of whittling through the things, because otherwise you leave and Greg, I expect you to be alive for a very long time, but this is going to take decades for you to do. So I'm glad that you're starting now, because otherwise you leave a ton of work for your kids and they'll just end up tossing it, which is sad, because my grandparents had the exact same set of encyclopedias that you do. And I'm not quite sure how accurate they are now. Jury's out on what they say about evolution, for example. But they were amazing to flip through. It was so fascinating. Truly, nothing exists like that now. You can actually feel in your hands and just look up anything you want.
I agree.
Put it on the poll, please, Juju, and I wonder how our audience will skew on this in terms of age. Have you ever seen an encyclopedia set? Because I'm assuming there are all sorts of young people out there who may not even know what the hell an encyclopedia is, because it's not necessary anymore.
My family bought an encyclopedia in 1995. Talk about a terrible time to do that.
It was a great gag gift back in the day. When I was 7 or 8, I remember my uncle once, Uncle Richard, R.I.P., he, for Christmas, was like, hey, here's a bunch of encyclopedias. And I was like, no,
Uncle
I'm a
Dick,
kid.
Not Uncle Dick,
no,
Uncle Richard?
Yeah, my mom's brother was named Uncle Richard.
The more serious
so
Uncle
two
Dick.
dicks.
We had 2 dicks. Yeah, he was a dick too, I think.
More than that.
Windows 95 dropped 2 weeks later.
Now we have Wikipedia, which is great.
Right.
I don't know. I'm kind of into the idea. I'm going to bid on these if you do put them up for auction,
Well,
Greg. Because a
hold on.
1967 encyclopedia?
Hold
Can't we
on.
just give them to Jeremy, Dad? I mean, what are we doing
No,
here?
but Chris, I'll tell you what we're doing here. I'm telling you that if you put that for sale right now for Ron McGill's foundation, you will raise a ton of money from our audience. Somebody who would like Greg Cote's full set of fossilized books.
People wanted Mike Fuentes' old shirts. Right. Why? I do not know, but several people asked for them from Mystery Crate.
All right.
So, Greg, there will be buyers for your
No, do me a favor,
encyclopedias.
please. Make Bimmel, our COO, useful out there. Tell him to figure out, go out there and tell him to figure out.
He can hear us, Dan.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm
and
well
that
aware.
Make him useful line really landed.
Let's get him to sell Greg Cote's encyclopedia to show people.
He's on a Zoom call right now. Should I go out there and be like, hey, make
yes.
yourself useful?
Yes. Interrupt him, whatever he's doing. Yes, tell him to stop what he's doing and sell Greg Cote's encyclopedia set to our audience, because I do believe that this has a legitimate value and it's got a sentimental value to Greg Cote. You are going to be taking something, an heirloom of Greg Cote's, and I know it sounds like a cash grab. I know it sounds...
Skip's out there, too.
Tell Skipper to help us sell these encyclopedias as well. because I believe our audience will pay a lot for Ron McGill's
sounding
foundation.
Dumber the more we talk it out, honestly.
I want to sell them by the end of the show. I want to bid. I want people to bid on the. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for
I'll be a part
supporting
of
this.
it. I love this.
infrastructure.
I think this is awesome. I would love to get an encyclopedia
Start
set
the
like
bidding.
that.
How
$5.
How else? How hard would it?
Lowball.
How hard? Man, do we need that much help? Can't we just do it on eBay? Like, do we need that much help doing this?
Well, then Greg might have to actually
eBay.
send out all of it himself.
Let's start eBay. Let's see where we just sell crap from our show that nobody would actually want. Mike Ryan, please go out
That's a
there.
great idea.
Tell Skipper and Bimmel to start eBay, where it's just selling.
Chris is an ideas guy, man. That was, I mean, 80-20 your
idea.
way.
It is a Greg Cote. It's a Greg Cote yard sale. Yes, it's a Greg Cote yard sale where we
Right.
just sell crap.
That's correct. And I have so much. I want to have a full-fledged auction because I have so much else. I covered 20 Super Bowls in a row.
There's so much crap in that office, Dad. I mean, I get your drawer full of credentials. That's a cool drawer because you probably got credentials there from the 80s.
No, I do. I save all my major credentials. But I also have Super Bowl satchels that they used to give out to the media every year.
You have a bobblehead that doesn't look anything like you.
Jeremy is saying, you know how Antiques Roadshow, it's one of the finest shows. Also a great example of just historic white privilege. You had what worth what in your garage?
Right.
You have, with your credentials, you have something that people would actually want that represents Super Bowl artifacts, like from a different time when football didn't sell out Super Bowls. You have precious heirlooms that I believe the audience would. Now, I don't think they're worth anything, but they're priceless.
Right. They've never been used. Like they're brand new.
Well, you went to the games. The
Yeah.
credentials were used.
I'm sure you
Well, the
used
credentials were,
but
but
the tote
not the
bags.
satchels. Like the
Hold on, you
computer bags.
accepted a gift from the NFL, Greg?
I did.
Oh.
The rules were under $100. You weren't allowed
Right.
to accept any gifts journalistically over $100.
You should have looked in Edwin Pope's trunk
No,
back in those
Wow.
days. I mean, just saying.
I mean, that cat's out of the bag.
I don't know who that is, but it's funny.
Too soon?
The body's still warm.
You know what's ridiculous about that whole thing about the media not accepting gifts and everything? It's like because I got a satchel that I've never used in 40 years, all of a sudden I'm going to write a very flattering column about the Super Bowl.
Rice Stadium was
Yeah,
an amazing host.
I got a $25 satchel here. You know what? What a great run league. The commissioner is wonderful. The best game I've ever seen. I'm going to actually change what I write because somebody gave me a cheap gift that I've never used.
We're running out of breath.
Were you
there.
allowed
Okay?
to? Back in the day, my
right,
dad would
though.
come home from a game or like a road trip, and he'd have like one of these like stat books, like not like printed out paper, but like an actual like media.
Yeah.
Like, were you stealing those?
He's got all the media guides. He's got every historic media guide in his desk
That's
from the
another
19th.
thing I've got. And they don't give out media guides anymore. They're all
You used to
online
come
now.
home, and I love it. I'd be like flip through. I'd be like, oh, there's Zach Thomas.
Yeah, that's another thing I want to sell.
But Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not often in the press box, but this is all mostly digital now. Whereas,
Yeah.
like, I remember like 10 years ago, they print everything out, like every quarter of a basketball game. Or
They're still doing the quarter sheet at basketball games.
okay.
Oh, what a waste of paper.
That is a waste of paper.
Yeah.
I
They also have
assumed
a
that was
screen with all the
digitized
stats
now.
up there, so it's like.
But
why
it's
do I need-
amazing if you're a head coach that doesn't want to make eye contact during a press conference after you've blown a 3-1 lead.
True.
If you're Doc Rivers, in other words. Can you guys
fault.
can you guys get eBay off the ground, please?
Yeah,
Because it's
let's
a
do it.
flea market. It's a I'm telling you, as a yard sale, this stuff has value, and you would raise a lot of money for Ron McGill's endowment if we sold some of your stuff. And as Jessica mentioned, you're just doing something thoughtful for your son before you die.
Seriously.
I don't think I'm asking too much of him to throw away all my considering the
No, but
inheritance
what
takes a
he's
means
long
lying
no,
there.
but what means
regardless.
something to you is
Yeah.
another thing. Like you want him to respect the things that meant something to his daughter's grandfather.
Right.
Like you want him to be able to explain to the granddaughter that brings you tears of joy. Now, we were just talking during the break, Greg and I, I love Greg Cote for whatever it is that issues crop up over 50 years. He is a person I love. And he was talking about at this age, he gets more emotional unreasonably about things because he's feeling, I'm sure, his mortality. The granddaughter has brought up all sorts of emotions where he'll just break down weeping thinking of his granddaughter. And what Jessica's suggesting is accurate. It's correct.
Yes.
That you would want her to remember her grandfather in ways that are meaningful, and you don't want Chris throwing out that means something to you.
Correct.
I mean,
Yes.
you're not going to be around to file an appeal. Every time I go to my dad's house and I'm like, I just look in his closet, and like 20 years from now, I'm going to have to throw out a DVD copy of A Fish Called Wanda. And he's going to be bothered by it? Come on.
Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you're a lot younger than my grandparents were, but they grew up during the Depression, and they had a real attachment to things that were, to us, junk. And they wouldn't throw away anything. I mean, they had the same appliances for literally 70 years. And eventually we were like, you need to get a new oven because you're going to light your house on fire. But they wouldn't get rid of anything. And
Right.
so their accumulation over the years, their house in Pittsburgh was filled to the brim with things that were just like rubber bands from the 1950s. We
Yeah.
don't need those, Grandma
Right.
and Grandpa.
Oh, I know. When I was cleaning out my desk drawer, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of paper clips.
We can throw those out.
I can't tell you the last time I
we can
used the
throw
paper
those
What's
clip.
the item that made you most emotional? Like you threw something away and you started weeping.
Well, there were just a bunch of things that used to be household items that aren't anymore. You know, letter openers.
Okay, this stuff this doesn't
staple
have value.
removers.
Buy this
Ah,
from
the
you,
staple
Greg.
or the
Letter
thingy
opener?
little.
Yeah.
You think letter openers are valuable, Jeremy?
I think
As a
someone
weapon.
will buy. I think someone would buy that knowing it was used by Greg. I think that's the part of it that, like, we talk about the dedication of this audience, knowing that money would go to Ron McGill's foundation, and knowing that this was in Greg's house for the last 40 years or whatever. I think
The hell
I
is
think
someone going to
any
do
of
with my
this-
dad's staple remover?
What
You'll
do people
find out
do
when
with
they
Mike
bid on it.
Fuentes' t-shirts?
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Chris, what you should do is your father should personalize, like write a note with each one to make it special. We'll figure it
That
out.
kind of staple.
eBay. We'll figure out how to do that. But Jessica, you have just made me want to go with my mother and father to their home and go through some of this stuff. But one of the things that becomes
Would they have a copy of Joe's apartment on Laserdisc?
one of the things that makes that difficult is I don't think any of us want to actually think about the reason that we're doing that.
It's worse doing it after they die. Trust me.
What Jessica said, I can relate to. My parents did go through the Depression, and my
This is the
my
new and
father-
unimproved Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz. Gamble on by DraftKings.
We can't hear you.
bar of soap.
I do want to know.
The bar of soap would get to be a sliver, almost too
Oh,
small
God,
to wash
yeah.
your hands with.
Yep.
And he would save it. He never. And my mother at one point would melt soap, scraps of soap,
Into a new bar?
into a new bar.
Wow.
Because they grew up so poor and lived through the Depression. And, you know, my father never made any money. He was a carpenter
Yeah.
and then a janitor, a custodian at a school. And you never get over that, you know, those kind of
The
things.
tendencies. I mean, yes, same situation. It
Right.
was going through their house was like a weird
Oh,
museum.
it's terrible. You got to be terrible.
Greg, we are going to keep this running, even though you don't know when we're on air or
Right.
off air, because that story was so good, and I felt legitimately bad that we cut you off again. I'm surprised. Well, I'll tell you why.
On Friendship Day?
If they played it back, you would see me wincing to try and alert you that you were headed into some emotional space talking about your Depression era parents,
Right.
and I was going to feel everybody would have seen on my face that one I felt bad about.
Okay.
But in trying to keep the conversation in a place where Greg Cote wants to talk about the things that Greg Cote wants to talk about, his Hall of Fame ballot is something that is very important to him. He takes it very seriously. Stugotz is texting me nonstop about why Joe Mauer shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. He is wrong on every front. He couldn't be more wrong, but he continues to text me. I was bothered that Gary Sheffield is not in the Hall of Fame. He was so very clearly, I don't even need to look at the numbers. He was so very clearly among the best and most feared at what it is that he did. He should be in the Hall of Fame. But he's probably not because he was a bit of a jerk and there are some steroid taint near him, even though nothing has been proven.
Ayo.
Your Hall of Fame ballot,
That's the best way to take it, by the way.
your Hall of Fame, I don't think that's accurate, Mike. I think that's not.
It's the cheek.
Thank you.
Well, try to find the tracks.
You'd
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
my ballot.
You'd like that, wouldn't
Bunch
you?
of experts.
I vote. People are making fun of me because I both use a check mark and fill in the square.
Yeah, the check is useless.
thorough.
You know, I like to do
Is this a
double.
Scantron?
I like
Oh,
to
this
do
is the
double.
actual ballot. I hadn't seen this in a while. They took mine away. Todd Helton, you voted for. Adrian Beltre, Joe Mauer, Manny Ramirez, Billy Wagner, Gary Sheffield, and Alex Rodriguez.
Right.
Look at that.
I'm good with that.
Moralizing Greg Cote has allowed a steroid person into the Hall of Fame.
Okay, here's the
Multiple.
thing. Okay, I have this weird thing. I will not vote for a steroid-addled reputation on the first ballot. I did not vote for A-Rod on the first ballot, even though his numbers obviously make him not only first ballot, but a unanimous choice, if not for the steroid cloud. But after time, and this affects, on that ballot, this affects A-Rod, Sheffield, and Manny Ramirez. In the case of Sheffield, he was in the Mitchell report. He was named in the Mitchell report, but never failed a drug test. So he's in a little bit of a different category than Manny Ramirez and A-Rod. But my attitude as a voter on all of those guys is it shouldn't be a death sentence. Okay, the fact that you weren't perfect, that you used steroids, that you did have a little bit of a bump in either your longevity, your ability to get over injuries, or your power output, that should not be a life sentence. A-Rod deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Now, by this time, he's paid his price. And I also believe with guys like that the Hall of Fame plaque should tell the whole story. That if A-Rod ever does get in, the Hall of Fame plaque should mention for all time that he did have this cloud over him.
Jessica, are you familiar in any way with the rumored photograph that A-Rod has over the bed in his house? No one has ever proven it. It is not. It's just urban lore and
Was
myth.
the bed part of that rumor?
Yes, it was over the bed.
It was over the bed?
Do you know
or
what
did
I'm-
we just want it
Yes,
to be over the
I
bed?
do know what you're talking about.
It is him as a centaur,
Yeah.
and the lower half of his body. This is how Josh Allen plays football. The lower half of his body is the body of a horse, but the upper half of his body is A-Rod's body. A-Rod was on South Beach Sessions, and we gave A-Rod, and to prove that the steroid taint should be off of him now, we gave him a gift. And let's play that clip real quick.
Come on, man. This doesn't look anything like him. This doesn't look anything like him. Here you go. This is
my gosh.
this is the it's ridiculous.
I mean, first of all, I wish I had that body. And second, I wish I was so handsome. That looks nothing like you in the face.
It could not look any less like you. But it is rumored and reported that you had one of these. Like,
By the way, hold on, let me say that. This is actually really funny because you don't know how many times in my career I had to answer that I had something like this above my bed. And it's so infamous a story, and I almost don't deny it anymore, but I think it's actually kind of funny.
you can now have it. You can now have it over your bed.
Now I can make it a reality.
He left with it, and where did he put it? Where do you think it was in a dumpster before he left the Elser?
Over his bed.
You think maybe? Here is Stugotz coming after me via text. Joe Mauer is not a Hall of Famer. Hall of Very Good, maybe, but not the Hall of Fame. Joke. Placido Polanco had more career hits than Mauer. So does Jason Bleeping Kendall. So does Juan Pierre and B.J. Surhoff. Jim Fregosi hit more home runs than him. So did Sixto Lescano. First ballot, this is an outrage. I expect you to address this today, and if you don't, I will address it and you for 4 hours. I'm appalled. Sixto Bleeping Lescano. Jason Kubel had a better career. Bonds had more HRs from 2000 and 2002 than he had for his 15-year career. Do something about this. 120 home run season, never had 100 RBI. Do something about it, Dan. Jose Reyes, more hits and homers. Do something. Rupert Jones, more homers. Do something about it. I have high standards for you. Do something about it.
I can explain Joe Mauer making the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. in
He's a
one
Hall
word.
of Famer?
Catcher. That's the word to explain it.
That's the whole deal.
That's the whole deal. A catcher is seen as a different position altogether. You put Joe Mauer's career stats, and he's a corner outfielder, he doesn't come close to the Hall of Fame, let alone on his first ballot. But catcher is just a different position.
Have you guys ever tried crouching down for 3 straight hours?
Oh, my God.
It's a
I can't do
nightmare.
it for 3 minutes.
I don't know how they do it.
Like, I'm good with him getting in. He crouched for a long time.
I will say Joe Mauer was the last box I checked on that ballot. Because while I think he's a Hall of Famer, largely because of his position, in the context of his position, to me, he's not a first ballot guy, which I hold sacrosanct. I don't vote for any first ballot players unless they're extraordinary and free of a cloud.
I did this poorly yesterday. I was talking about Rendon. Rendon, who signed a $245 million contract, was complaining about the length of a season. And I was talking about seeing the traveling secretaries come in August, and everybody's exhausted on a baseball team. Everybody who works for a baseball team. But I hadn't even thought about, I'm talking about pop-up slides all season. I hadn't thought about what it's like to be a catcher in like Texas, where you're playing all summer, and it's 110 degrees, and you're crouching during day games. I don't know how those seasons are that long. And what you say, Chris, how long, if we had a competition,
Don't make me do it. I'm terrible at this.
Well, I think I want to do it with you. I think I want to, if you want to do it here.
I would beat you in a wall sit.
If you guys want to do a crouch right now, I'm willing to do a competition in the back of this room. We can allow Greg Cote to talk about his 1967 encyclopedias and see if we can make it to the end of the segment here in a competition of who can crouch the longest and stay crouched. Who wants to do that competition with me?
I'll do it.
What's wrong with you,
No,
Mike?
that's horrible. I don't want to do that.
Christopher,
You're
it's
going to do it?
It's a bad visual.
I'm
honestly.
good doing it. It's not a great
Quads are
angle
gonna
for
be
me. I put on
toast.
some LBs,
Yeah.
like me in that spot.
No.
My belly
What's-
kind of sits in between my two legs.
What's
when I
the
do that.
funniest visual, though?
I'll go between Chris and Dan.
You think let's have a competition, you and me, Chris, and Mike and Jessica and Jeremy can do the show, and we'll just be in the back of the room and see if we can make it to the end of the segment trying this.
The crouching is the easy part. It's the getting up from a crouch that would get me.
That's true, Greg.
It really
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
It was a good point you made, Greg, about Mauer, though, because toward the end of his career, they tried to move him to first base because he had dealt with so many concussions. And Justin Morneau was no longer on the team because he had dealt with so many concussions. But that made Mauer sort of an irrelevant player. So toward the end of his career, he was no longer dominant. But when he was at the peak of his powers, in 2009, when he was the MVP of the league, I think he hit close to 370 as a catcher that was playing every day. It's almost, his Hall of Fame argument is almost similar to Sandy Koufax, where it's like, no, did his longevity really make him a Hall of Famer? So are his counting stats there? Maybe not necessarily, but at the peak of his career, he was so far and away the best player at his position in such a tough position that's what gets him into the Hall.
Right. And there are examples of that in all Halls of Fame. Barry Sanders in football had a very brief career, relatively speaking. Barry Sanders is probably well out of the top 10 in all-time rushing because of that, and yet he was the best at what he did. Same with Jim Brown, Gale Sayers. There's a lot of players like that. But in baseball, catcher is just a different position. It just is.
And it looks like Chris Cote's feeling that right now. The kneecaps appear to be stretched quite thin. Are you
Dan
guys
is
doing
holding
okay?
his ankles?
This is like one batter.
I don't think you're allowed to rest.
I need some of that steroid taint. I need some of that steroid taint.
You're in like a 4-point stance. I don't think you're allowed
Wait a
to do
minute.
that.
When I see
Is Greg
people
joining?
crouch like a catcher,
Oh,
I
no.
gotta go, hee-haw free! Hee-haw free! Where's it going?
Where's he going?
Can you throw up Greg's ballot one more time? I want to ask Greg about his ballot real quick. So you have how many votes available to you? 10?
10.
10, and you filled out 7?
I'd have to count. Yeah, I think
yeah.
so, yeah.
All right. So guys like
I don't vote 10
Andy-
just to say that I did.
what Andy Pettit, what's the argument against him?
I mean, the generic argument is that obviously I don't think he's quite a Hall of Famer. You know, Dan, that does not look like a catcher
He's
crouch.
cheating.
He is cheating.
There you go.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
What do you mean?
I mean, you had your hands on your ankles. What are you doing?
But Pettit was always in the discussion for his era as one of the best guys going.
But
You
that was
just
more
don't think he's good
postseason.
enough?
Right.
Well, the postseason matters. I mean,
Of course.
I mean, you got to draw the line somewhere. There's the Hall of really good has thousands and thousands of people in it. There are people there that I almost voted for.
We look
that
like
I
we're
didn't.
shitting.
Squatty potty.
Yeah, you guys do look like you're shitting.
You
No
could probably
Beltran?
sell this paper, Greg.
Who was the toughest person to leave off?
I considered Carlos Beltran for sure. I'm trying to think.
Was
of
he the
who
toughest person to leave off?
I would say so. Pettit, I considered. Andrew Jones, he has so many fans in Atlanta. Every time my ballot comes out, I get hate mail from Andrew Jones fans. And for his defense, I consider him every year. But, I think there's degrees of Hall of Fame.
This is the new and unimproved Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
first
Gamble
ballot Hall
on
of
by
Famer.
DraftKings.